Hi, my name is Diep Tran. I am a third generation chef, restaurateur. I'm a worker, labor rights activist and advocate. Most recently, I co-wrote the Red Boat Cookbook with Cuong, Pham, and Tien Nguyen.
Welcome to The Vietnamese. I'm your host, Kenneth Nguyen. Being part of a culture of nearly 100 million Vietnamese people in the world today comes with a lot of pain, proud history, and privilege. Join me as I highlight and explore the Vietnamese experience from all over the world.
You and I did a podcast a few weeks ago, and this discussion of the first question that I asked came up, and I have since then really put some thought into asking the question of what does it mean to be Vietnamese to our guests. But now I'm going to change it up, and I have been changing it up in different ways. But how has it changed for you in your life up until this point?
I think your one's understanding of one's own identity, I think changes with some sort of pivotal moment, just like like significant moments in your life, where things that change. Like, first of all, when I was in Vietnam, I didn't think, oh, what's it like to be Vietnamese? Because I was just living my 5-year-old life, or even in the refugee camp, I think, that changed when I came to the U.S. and I realized, they don't speak the same language as I do. Why are we getting like a very low-level hate crime all the time in the neighborhood? Like when I was a kid, the main theme when I came to the U.S. was like, wow, me, they're very wasteful, like they waste everything, like everything is like disposable. And like even like taking a shower, like the first time I saw a commercial for I think it was Irish Spring. Right. And they were like the showers going and they're just like soapy, and we're like, oh my god, don't how new of it, because like, well, what did we do, right? We put in a bucket and then we have a little scoop and then that's how you would bathe. So the idea of just like, oh wow, these like they're just running that water like forever and lathering up. So like, that was like felt very different. I go, so I understood like those are Người Mỹ and then we're not Người Mỹ, or like when I for a long time, we'd always we'd come home from like going out somewhere, probably Little Saigon. We'd come back to the house and our house was full of teepee. And we're like, Người Mỹ, they're so wasteful. Like they tell you they tell you right? But we didn't know it was like a low-level hate crime. Like they right. hated us. It was like, wow, they're like Americans are so rich they could just waste toilet paper. So but so yeah, I think it changes. Like, I think before I kind of really understood what was going on, I just thought like, we were very thrifty. Like I understood that Vietnamese people were very thrifty compared to like white people, Americans, or just Americans in general, just American born, and then the first time I kind of realized it was like some animosity was when, we used to go dumpster diving on trash day, like we'd go and we're like, oh my gosh, here's a sewing machine, perfectly good. Maybe it just needs to be oiled up or whatever. And we never bought a new sewing machine. Like we always took a sewing machine from the dumpster, and then one time a cousin of mine came home completely bloodied because some of the neighborhood kids were beating him up because they said that they were, like that they were stealing their trash. I'm like, dude, it's your fucking trash. Yeah. And then, but we handled it because there were 15 of us.
Okay, how did you wait, I can't let you go. Wait, how did you handle it? Handle it.
I mean, we just browbeat him because I think he thought that it was just this one kid and no one's around, but then they didn't realize our 5-bedroom house was full of 5 families. You know what I mean? It wasn't like like every house, every bedroom was an apartment. So they were like 15 kids. So
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Cerritos.
Got it.
I lived on the same street as Lindsay Wagner's brother. So that's a little the bionic woman. Anyway, but yeah, so we didn't. I no one threw a punch, but all 15 of us like went to like asked the cousin who's the guy, and we just browbeat him, and he got freaked out because one didn't know what we were going to do, but none of us ever threw a punch. But
Wow.
and then same thing happened to my other little cousin when she went to kindergarten. She was one of our younger cousins, and then she came home crying. She said they're so mean and they pushed her around. And so 15 of us went to elementary
Yeah.
school. I say and browbeat like a kindergartner, like so I guess it was intimidation, I guess, but yeah, like we stood up, but none of us really, I don't remember any punches being thrown, but
That's like
we've
pleading the fifth right now.
been.
You arrived in Cerritos, and you grew up in Cerritos, basically, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Cerritos is between Orange County and LA, kind of, right? It's basically
Mm-hmm.
between it. I've
I think
always
it's
thought,
it's it's geographically LA, but it's more culturally akin to Orange County. That's kind
correct,
of, yeah.
correct. That's a perfect description of Cerritos. When I think about those in between cities between LA and Orange County, it's very special because you kind of get to share a unique combination of because they're very different cities or ways of growing up, Orange County and LA, and to live in like a Downey or Cerritos or
Mm-hmm.
those kind of neighborhoods are it's unique and it's you can go to both cities fairly easy, 20 minutes each way, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think like, when people say like, oh, I grew up in Little Saigon, I think more people actually grew up going to Little Saigon,
Yeah.
but living in Long Beach, living in Norwalk, like Artesia and Cerritos, like, but, where did we culturally, like we spent our time wasn't necessarily our residence, the city of our residence, but more like, we would go like, since, I think Little Saigon developed, I would say, I think even like 79, it had a little bit of something like the 80s, and then 82
Right.
is really when it popped off. Was, we'd like, every weekend was the bonsa, right? We didn't call Little Saigon, we call bonsa, right?
Bonta.
And like, like, what do you want from bonsa? Like, I want a bun bag, I want a jingly load, I want to like you you kind of pre-game because you only go once a week, and then my grandparents made jalua, that was their side hustle. So
Mm.
like, they would go to Nam Hoa was an OG. I still love Nam Hoa for their frozen jazz that they make is the best jazz gua, right? And so like, they would like buy like 50 100 pounds of thịt giò so to you make a jalua at home because they had like the buffalo chopper to
Yeah.
make that. I mean, like a lot of people, I mean, that's kind of like after, my grandparents did it first, and then when a new relative would come, it was during the ODP time where like one day you just get a phone call and go, hey, Buck Bike is at the airport with his kids, I'm like, who is Buck Bike? Oh, okay. And all of a sudden a whole new family comes, and and you got no notice. And so, but when Buck Bike's family came, they're like, okay, we already got business for you, lam already, jalua, right? So they would make jalua, like, and then, and Buck Home would come and like, hey, you knew you don't got the restaurant not set up for you yet, lam jalua, it's like that buffalo chopper like traveled.
Yeah. Can you tell us what a buffalo chopper is for
Okay,
people who
but
don't know?
a buffalo chopper is the crazy ass, um it's like a food processor, but when I know a lot of people are just afraid of that little blade that they have in a food processor, like a Cuisinart. Just imagine that, but like 10 times as big. So
Yeah.
it's fucking crazy. And it's like no children should be around it, but we were around it all the time and washing it and stuff. Like it was just it's just like it almost like looks like a mini jet propeller,
Yeah.
like jet engine blade, So kind of like, what it was? It's like that Indiana Jones, that really racist one with short round, and some guy got killed because he got caught into a blade of like a ceiling fan. It was like
Yeah.
that,
That, yeah.
that's how, yeah. So that was a buffalo chopper, and you need that to grind the jalua, unless you
You
were
know,
OG and then you want to pound it, but who the hell's doing that, in the US?
my grandmother lost two of her fingers in
Oh,
that buffalo chopper.
Oh my God. Yeah. So it's
He
like,
made Jalo, yeah, when she was in Vietnam, and yeah, they
oh
love
my
that's their thing.
God. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm about to faint because I was like, yeah, because it's really scary. So like
Yeah.
as an 8-year old, you're like, the fuck, I don't want to help grandma. Can I do anything else but that? But even it was scary because like my grandparents, when I met them, they were, like in their 60s already. So I always thought they're gonna die anyway. So I'm like, oh my God, you're around this. It's just like seems so dangerous. But they're, grandma was like fucking fearless. So, yeah.
So when you were growing up, what did you want to do?
When I was growing up, I had already had a plan. I wanted to become an English professor. I just want because I love English literature, and I just wanted to read, Victorian literature and Regency Jane Austen literature, and that's what I wanted to do, and poetry, and so that's I didn't kind of care about any other subjects, but I really loved English, and it began because we were foster kids because my parents weren't here, but my father had not officially passed away, but he was in prison in Học Tập, and so my grandparents were our foster parents, and because of that, you had to have social workers come, and every time the social worker comes, it was like the warden had come. Like we didn't. It was like it didn't feel like this person was looking out for our welfare. It's more like if we fuck this shit up, then we're gonna have to like go to an orphanage or some shit. So it was very scary. We didn't think of the social worker as a friend, but the social worker would come, and one social worker. They weren't all that nice, but this social worker was really sweet. Always gave us books and had given me a coloring book because it was age appropriate, but had given my sister 2 books, and one of them was the Secret Garden, and I totally fell in love with it, appropriate it for myself, and like just really fell in love with the language of it all, and like I love looking up new words. And so anyway, I kind of thought that would be my trajectory, and it's because also like it was a way to escape my life, and like, just being able to be transported. I mean, now when I look at literature from that era, it's very problematic, and I would probably be like trafficked. I would not have the agency of these white characters,
Right.
even if it's David Copperfield, like even if it was like you had some trials and tribulations, it wouldn't be the same as like a coolie, so like I would like stuck in an opium den, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, but at the time I didn't have that, so again, like that, that changed, and that kind of affected.
Mm.
That's like when I went to college, and I realized I took my first post-colonial literature class. I go, oh, I was identifying with the wrong ass people, because
Hmm.
this would never be my situation in that era, and so that then I realized, like had a different understanding of being Vietnamese, and at the same time as my like race awareness was also when I came out. So like it's very much tied with like my queerness too. So yeah, and that changes, so every kind of moment when you kind of have a new understanding of yourself, your understanding of what being Vietnamese is, and then it also becomes irrelevant too, because for me, like
Mm.
what does it mean to be Vietnamese, like your original question. I find that like sometimes it just locks people in, and I think I don't find a lot of power in locking myself into any identity that's static, and so I think like I hopefully I always have revelations about myself, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up because when I first started out, it was just what does it mean to be Vietnamese? And then as it went along, I really began to realize that this changes a lot. So I added what does it mean to be Vietnamese to you today? So that's
Mhm.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
how do we mark it? How do we mark ourselves today? Like how are we defining it today in
yeah.
time? So when future generations hear this, they're like, okay, that's what it kind of meant for that person in that city at that time. And now it's like, oh, well, you know what? I want to hear how it's changed and how it's evolved for
Mhm.
you. And I think that's now more, we get a broader picture of this all because Vietnamese identity changes, and then our personal identity changes so much as well.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and so when you got to college, you studied English, or was it something related to that?
I was a completely colonized being because I studied English literature with a double major in French.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, so yeah, I dropped the double French double major. I was like one class away from being able to qualify for the double major, but it made me so angry because I'd taken this post-colonial literature class, and I'm like, fuck this shit, like what the fuck, like, and then it made me. That's when I realized, like I had spent all this time, like 7 years, intensely studying French. I mean, like I didn't just study French; I was like really fucking into it. Like when I was in high school, I felt that I joined the French club, and then I felt like the French classes, our advanced French classes, our honors French classes, weren't rigorous enough. So I lobbied. We fucking fundraised. We put on a Valentine's Day dance. Bunch of fucking nerds put on this dance. This so we can fundraise for fucking more rigorous, advanced French books.
You
Like,
hardcore.
that's so fucking dumb. But like all these like cheerleaders and all these popular kids that we were not part of, went to this dance that we curated because we wanted to have, we didn't say it was it was just that the French club had sponsored it, but like we didn't say what it was, we just said, here, just come and dance your ass off, But yeah, and so that's kind of how hardcore I was with my French, and
So what does it mean to be French to you today?
okay,
I'm just kidding.
yeah. But when I went to college, and like I was just like, I watched a French movie a week. I like my I wanted to go to study abroad at some point, or like after college I want to go to France. And so I wanted to, like they said, like that you really become a very fluent in French if you can and dream in French. So that was kind of like, if I could have a dream
That
in
was your
France.
goal.
Yeah, and I had a little bit of that, but then at that moment I had, just kind of understood what a, colonized being was. And then I was like, fuck that shit. Like, so I know more. I knew the French pluperfect tense and all this fucking, like French is the tenses are insane, most Germanic romantic language, the tenses are insane. But then I go, wow, I fucking can't even fucking read a newspaper in Vietnamese. The fuck,
Oh shit.
because Vietnamese newspapers, it's not how people talk, right? So it's like, it's kind of almost the opposite of like the English American newspapers, because they try to get you at a certain level. I think Vietnamese newspapers, like I mean, I could like still spell it out and like read it very slowly, but I didn't have a huge comprehension because a lot of the words was like, Tinti, what the fuck is that? I
Hmm.
didn't understand, and it made me so upset. Like, here's this language that's built in that I have a whole community for, and I fucking just ignored it to the point where I don't, like I sound like a fucking idiot, but here I can write, like a whole essay on like Victor Hugo, and Baudelaire and like Fleur de Mal, like stupid bullshit. And so anyway, so now I'm no longer fluent in French, but
But
I'm
let
not
me,
that great in Vietnamese either.
what do you think drove you to be such a Francophile?
Oh, because like my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, that's what they thought was like, high literature was like, fucking classy shit, like we just fucking bought into that bullshit. I mean, that's like, just because I didn't grow up during the French occupation doesn't mean like the residue and legacy of colonialism didn't, isn't still affecting me. I say it still is there, like so many people like, oh, well, so and so, well, she knows, she knew how to write in French. I'm like, so did every fucking person that had to fucking get educated,
Well,
whatever.
well, what it's gonna become in like 10 years is like, it's gonna be the whole Korean thing, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
it's going to be the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, he went to study in Korea, or she was part of this K-pop, management agency. It's going to be all of that too, and at some point, we're going to have to cash in our chips, our Vietnamese chips, and be like, no, 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 guys, we need to be the fucking destination for all young people, and or am I wrong? Am I wrong to be thinking this
Um,
way?
I think Vietnam is already becoming that, but I don't think it's the same thing because it's not like fucking Korea is going to us and colonizing us and like
Mm,
calling us coolies and making us like conscripting us to work on rubber plantations. So it's not quite the same,
it's a
but
good point.
yeah. Yeah, so the French are a whole different thing. They weren't like taxing through 30% of our GDP with salt and shit, so but what I think, I totally think that actually, the Saigon economy, this, I mean, COVID kind of puts everything out of whack, but I think people are already looking to Saigon, I mean, to like Vietnam in general as an economic power. It might not be as recognized yet, but if you're talking about like culturally about K-pop, I think like, like Vietnamese artists are coming up, like, you know, Fury. I was like the Netflix movie. I mean, it's not a Netflix movie, but it came on
Well, it
Netflix.
was, I think it was on Netflix for a little bit there.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
They
we
bought it,
kind of
they licensed it.
yes, yes. So, but I thought that was kind of really amazing, and it was so funny. Like we just were like, this is like Taken, but with like right with like by Vietnamese. But we also like, well, she's really girl bossy, and then we saw like a picture of her just eating somewhere, and she had a shirt that said girl boss on it, and it was just hilarious.
Oh, God, that's so funny.
Because it's like pretty much all seasons of her girl bossing, right? So I don't think Vietnam's very far away from that. And like Dustin Nguyen's movie years and years ago, I had already kind of augured in that. Like I felt like when he like plays a villain for the first time, I really loved it. So I think it's becoming like a cultural power already. It's and I kind of like that the way it's how it's organically becoming, and so we're
Did
not. I
you
don't think we're far away from that.
Did you ever? Because I remember going to your restaurant, Good Girl Dinette, a few times, and I went with my good friend Anderson Lay,
Mm.
and I don't remember if he mentioned anything about you being adjacent to the film business.
No, no, I'm
Um,
just a supporter. I love visual communications,
okay,
and like, that was a major event for us, in our 20s, like we would like this is, before everything became digital, like they would have this like, whole program, and we definitely like, like that's how we planned it. Like, okay, are you going to the short films? Are you like we like, and I all my friends were like either on a jury for some selection or in the short films or whatever, and I love Leslie Ito, who, and for Linda, so like that was always been in our, in my like
so you're old
consciousness.
school. Wow,
It
you've
was
been around
fun,
this for a long time.
yeah, I mean, we'd watch the premiere and stuff, but we really love the obscure short stuff, you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
because that's like, it's just like, or like this one movie, like it was called, oh, now I forgot, but it was like this experimental film, feature length, and I just love the visual communication, like gave it an audience, like these films that would never kind of like reach, like even an art house film, even to reach
Yeah.
an art film is very hard. So I love that. And and shorts is great because it's like, short films are great because if you don't like it, it's done in 5 minutes. So it always gave a chance to, so you got to watch 10 films, and I've always been trying to tell Leslie, but life got in the way, but I'm like, Leslie, it's time to do like an Asian American food film festival, because all these young, at the time in the 90s, all these young filmmakers, one of the first things they always did was like did something food related, like someone like filmed, like it did an experimental film on kimchi making, or
Mm.
so it was always like that always featured in so many narratives, so I'm hoping one day that's going to happen, because I think it'd be super fun. And my idea, and I just could never make it happen because I was running the restaurant, but I was like, Leslie, like just think, like just like, even if it's archival, like just look at the old
Right.
submissions, it's just like, let's do like, and I mean, I feel like now the 90s is like all that fashion is actually hip again, so it might be really cool. But like, so I
Do
grew
a
up, yeah, I grew
The
up with
retrospective, yeah.
exactly, and just like pick the food related ones. You know, it could be transcendentally too. And
Yeah.
there's a, like I used to love the Garfield Theater in San Gabriel Valley, and there was like an Asian art, like they showed like really like Hong Kong Jackie Chan movies and stuff, like some crazy movies like people just getting disemboweled. It was kind of like a little snuffy to me, so I'm like, I'll avoid that shit. But their concessions and was great because they had popcorn, but they also had bako and mako, and and I was like, wouldn't it be fucking great to have like an event where like in Korea, like they would actually grill cuttlefish for you inside the
Mm.
theater, like fire inside
That's
the
hard.
theater, fire inside the theater. Like
It's hardcore.
we would do that, but I mean it'd be so fun, to have like an outdoor screening and just have like Vietnamese concessions or like Korean concession, because I would just I would die of happiness to smell, muk Mako next to me. My girlfriend, on the other hand, would not be too pleased, but like, with some hoisin and sriracha, man, heaven.
Let's just for everybody listening, visual communication. If you're listening, Dip said it twice. It's not a phrase that's like, oh, just visually communicating. It's an actual nonprofit entity here in Los Angeles. It's been a good 7 decades, I think, in existence,
Yeah.
and they host believe it's the LA Asian Film Festival. The
They
extent of what I
gave
know.
Justin Lin his start.
Start, yeah,
John Cho, Shopping for Fangs. That was his
right.
first feature that he appeared in. So like, yeah, they kind of they were the launching pad and still are the launching pad for a lot of
Yes,
talent.
and it's
Yeah.
very empowering because just recently I was sitting talking to two young Taiwanese kids, one from Taiwan, one Taiwanese American, and they were complaining to me that they were applying to internships in Hollywood and not getting a call back. I'm like, have you heard of the LA Asian Film Festival? They're like, no. I'm like, well, go volunteer for that, and you can
Mhm.
meet people in the industry and yada yada yada. And it's a wonderful place to really congregate and build your social tribe because that is where a lot of us have networked and met, all the people that we know.
And that's how I know of Anderson Lay through the organization too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that, and for some reason, film and
Yes.
food are so intertwined in this city and throughout the world. I've noticed that a lot of people that worked in the film industry go into the food industry and vice versa. And Anderson Lay is no exception. His family are of the Pig and the Lady in Hawaii, and Piggy Smalls for everybody
Which is a
who's
great
been.
name.
Yeah, it's amazing. So when you got to college and you're studying literature and French, and were you cooking? Were you involved in food?
I was cooking for just for my friends, obviously, because I wanted a career in academics. But it was my first time having my own kitchen because my grandma was such like a force that you just her kitchen was her domain, and it just like she's like a bright star, just burn the fuck out of you, so like was my like I got to be my own little I got to go into a different galaxy in which grandma did not loom large, and so I got to like learn how to cook for the first time. I mean, my grandma taught me how to cook because like she wanted to make sure that when I lamzo, like I know how to cook all bullshit, like
Okay, so you have a grandmother who's old school, right?
yeah.
Northern old
Hmm.
school.
Hmm.
Okay, and so this concept of lamzhou, right? Let's talk
Uh-huh.
about that because
It's
I can't
bullshit.
imagine. It is utterly bullshit, but it is worthy to talk about because this is a paradigm that is patriarchal. It's upside down. It is all the things. It's misogynist. I mean, it's just pure bullshit.
Yeah.
But
And
lamzhou means
it's upheld by women, and it's
yes
executed by women.
by women. You're
The
absolutely right.
men benefit from it, but the women are the enforcers. Yes.
Yeah, and it is crazy because if you are lamzhou means you are a
work like
You're a
working.
workhorse.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're the
yeah,
family slave, but okay, so you are the daughter-in-law basically
yeah.
to the family. So you move into the man side, the husband side, and you lamzhou, you are their servant basically. You're an indentured servant
For
to
like a year, for like a year.
yeah.
There is a time limit on this bullshit. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
it's
I
only for
didn't.
a year. I mean, it's
Oh,
kind of like that
really?
when you get married and you like have your own first job, you give a year of your the son has to give a year of the salary to the mom. Is
I
that's
didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's I mean, it's not enforced as you know, strictly, but like if
Yeah.
you're a good mama's boy, you do that's what you do. Is like
Okay, so when you were growing up and you hear these sort of like these ideas, at what point in your mental sort of capacity are you reacting?
I'm like never. Well, like I okay, so I mean I never questioned that I would get married or have to get married, and this is like why I was so drawn to like English literature. It's like and especially a particular kind of literature, which is like Victorian literature, which focus heavily on female romantic friendships, like friendships that are romantic, but like from the neck up. And so the idea of like I just imagine this is so I would get married to like a very gentle man, you know, and we'd have a wonderful relationship, and I like I said from the neck up, and then at night we would just turn off the lights and he would do what he had to do and we forget about it, and the next day I would like resume my life with my all these female friends that I have that I love romantically, like it was like that's really not, I thought that was the height of it. It's just like, look, I'm not trying to go for a macho guy. I'm not trying to I want the most feckless man, who's gonna just go with what I need to go. And like, like the most asexual man is like, yes, you are the one for me, and so that's kind of what I thought, if the route I had to go, before I came out, and I go, I don't fucking have to marry a man. So, so I was much more worried about the future mother-in-law, because even my grandma, as much as she enforced it, she also hated it, because she married, she agreed for my mom to marry my father because my father's mother was already deceased, and she says, oh, we agreed to this marriage because she doesn't have to lamzo because the mom was already dead. So so like even the
Oh,
women who go through
wow.
it kind of like fuck that shit too, but obviously not fuck that shit, so it's I feel like, I was kind of laughing, like, I think like um I feel like daughter-in-laws and mother-in-laws spend a whole lifetime trying to repair the fucking bullshit that happened in the first year of, of her joining the
Wow.
family, because it's brutal, and it's the concept behind it is that, you're not bringing anything to the fucking family. You're like a fucking drain. That's why, like, like they didn't invest in girls, because like one, like why would we invest in a daughter, because she's gonna go to another family anyway, and then when you, so like you didn't have any value in your birth family, and you go to your husband's family and you don't have no fucking value either, so then you have to, even though you fucking bring a dowry with you, then you have to like earn, like become like an unpaid internship, until you become a mother and you can do that bullshit to some other woman. It's
Yeah,
just like really
and
bullshit.
that trauma goes deep because I've seen it in my own family where the sisters of the brothers like gang up on the
Yeah.
Zhou, and it's not 1 year, it's like the whole life of the woman, and then it creates all this weird dynamic because it's like if the Zhou comes from like a more affluent or more established family, the politics inside the women who are the siblings of the man, it gets all dicked up. It gets all weird and discombobulating where there's like jealousy because,
Mhm.
that family didn't bring us to America, all this crazy shit. And they for life this poor daughter-in-law is crucified because she's not from this original family. And it just, I don't know how and why these things are continuing in the world today.
Yeah, it's bullshit. But like no, like I don't want to make it like women had no agency in this. Like some women get out of it. Like one, like look, we gotta fucking move away from your fucking family. I don't have to deal with them except for the holidays or something. Like
Yeah.
you find workarounds and that, and and but the thing is that I'm trying to think like I mean obviously my grandma must have had her Lamzo year, but I can't imagine because she was so powerful, and she had grandpa like grandpa was like anything you want, so I feel like grandma's like she never felt, she was like this is bullshit, but she never felt powerless. She's like I'm gonna get through this fucking year and we're gonna go out and we're gonna strike out on our own, and
Mm.
I'm gonna become my own millionaire,
Yeah.
so like it's not like women don't get out of it, but you can get caught in where you think like the approbation of your husband's family is all there is, and like not all
Yeah.
women kind of fall into that trap,
So you're
but
cooking, in college, and after college, do you go out and you get a regular job, or are you now finding yourselves in more of the kitchen space?
no, I so when I realized I want to decolonize myself, and like so I stopped taking French. I took more ethnic studies, sociology, and then I was like, and this is during the time of the LA uprising. So 92, I
Yeah.
graduated in 94. So then I
Do
was
you go to
just
school
like,
out here in LA or
I went
back
to
east, or?
UC Riverside.
Mhm.
And we had this wonderful professor. Her name is Edna Bonasich. She and Ed Lee co-sponsored this. Edmund Lee co-sponsored or like wrote a paper or like came up with this idea of like the what is it called, the Asian middleman, which is kind of like how the modern minority myth has actually backfired on the Asian American community, has become like a place for like white America to like absolve itself of its sins by saying that by putting up this modern minority as like an idea that you can succeed in this and there's no racism, but at the same time they become a buffer, so all the anger that rises up from racial inequity gets focused on ethnic or immigrant
Right.
businessmen or business people. So anyway, so that kind of really like they talked about this as a theory, and or like not theory, but like this construct, but then here it was playing out in
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 real
in the
life.
in the LA uprising. And so like I just like I really it changed my trajectory, because I'm like I don't want to be a professor, like sit in a fucking ivory tower, and as much as I love literature, it didn't feel like it was like purposeful, and so I wanted to like really do social justice work. And I still wasn't in my head. I'm like, oh, I'd love to own a restaurant one day, cook the food I wanted to cook, that's like not like exactly like the food my relatives and grandparents cook. But I just didn't really feel called. I felt it kind of frivolous. And
Yeah.
so I said, I wanted for, I said, so I talked to Edna, and I talked to some other folks, and they're like, that'd be great, and I said, I don't want to be in academia. And at the time we were already doing like protests. We were also like every weekend we were going to Beverly Hills to protest sweatshop work, because this is like during the time like the El Monte sweatshop
Sweatshops.
work. I mean that was truly traffic slave work, because they were like behind barbed wire. People don't know about it, you can Google it, the El Monte sweatshop scandal. And so somebody said to me like nonprofit work, it's really hard work, and you'll probably burn out in 10 years. That's kind of like what people say. And I said, especially the work I wanted to do. And so I said, I could give my first 10 years out of college doing this, I'll burn the
Wow.
fuck out. And and like they said, the pay isn't great. And I don't fucking care. Like, I don't fucking live an extravagant life. And, like, I just felt like the older I got, the more I would care about a mortgage, or care about a savings or retirement, like, I was like, why not like these years, I don't have to compromise. I can live really spare, And that's what I did. So I like my first job, I made $17,000 a year, you know, but it was like all the work I wanted to do. But in the back of my head, like I said, in 10 years, like when I graduated, so in 10 years, I want to own a restaurant. And then in 10 years, I owned a restaurant. Like, you know, like 3 years before the 10 years was going to be up, I said, I should like actually start looking at, you know, how
Wow.
to, so I like wrote a business plan, took some classes, that kind of thing. And, you know, but, you know, I'm really glad I did that because in the 10 years I was working in nonprofit, I really got to understand labor, the issues of labor, the issues affecting workers. And, you know, and like, you know, this is a time when like I felt like my understanding of a living wage increased. And, you know, it was kind of like 10 years of a meditation and like what would it mean to have a
Mm.
restaurant, you know. And so I enacted all of those values in my restaurant. I think if I had just opened a restaurant and not have had that experience of like 10 years of meditation and
Yeah.
what does it truly mean to have a restaurant that doesn't exploit labor. Because when you start to do that, like when I first started to price out my dishes, I was just doing one of the ways in which you price out your dishes. You kind of just set the price what your the current market is
The
setting.
comps. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, okay, you know, I think at the time maybe like tofu was like, I'm trying to remember, maybe
Seven,
two.
eight dollars.
Yeah, like sometimes it was like six, you know, like maybe six to
Mm-hmm.
eight, you know, like there was. And so I said, okay, if that's the case, then here's my food cost, here's my this cost, here's my rent, and here, you know, like prorate the rent to once a whatever. And it turned, I'm like, oh my God, this doesn't work. And so,
Yeah.
and that's when you realize, oh, the labor, people are shortchanging the labor, you know. And so you know, I just said, okay, I'm not gonna do it that way. I'm gonna actually like, I start with my labor, and I wanted to start everybody off at $1 above minimum wage, like the lowest paid worker, which usually is the dishwasher, is paid $1 above minimum wage. And then I worked up that way. And that's where I got to my cost, which was like higher than anyone else's. You know, and they were like, the fuck? I'm like, that's what it is, you know, like, and the bowls were smaller. You know, like I took a lot of hit. Okay, I took the hit for the culture. Okay, every time somebody fucking complained to me, I said, "I do this. You know, I'm doing this for the greater good." Like, so when you go to eat pho somewhere else, you know, you think, "Oh, that's cheap," versus this is expensive. This should be the norm, and that's cheap. And then you should ask why it's cheap. You know, and then for me, like, I have like a great, you know, I have like almost profound um, empathy for the market forces that small business, especially immigrant businesses, have to contend with in terms of pricing. So I never wanted to shame anybody, but it was more like, hey, if you're someone who's thinking about owning a restaurant, because I think a restaurant that's already in existence, their business model is their business model. It's hard to come out of that. But if
Yeah.
you're starting a business, here, why don't you start off? Don't think about, you know, what's comparable prices. Start with how much you want to pay, and then go above from that. You know, and so yeah. So anyway, that's kind of how I started the restaurant.
Well, I think the state of affairs for restaurants and food in California is kind of fucked. It's bleak.
It is. It is.
It's
Yeah.
bleak. Unless you're charging like top dollar, and even top dollar like a restaurant like True Food, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see the economics working out long term, and especially like you see that in the grocery store, things are like almost double. You see gas prices up, but you don't see restaurants raising their prices double, or you don't even see it 15-20%. They raised it, but you don't really see it. So how is it all like the math working out? Because it's not really compensating and catching up yet.
I think it will, and I do think it's because people are so afraid. I think what's happening is you know, restaurant owners and like independent operators, they're just taking a hit. They're working longer hours.
Yeah.
They're working those, you know, if they're working 11 hours before, they work at 14 now. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's really, so I don't think it's necessarily sustainable. And you know, I think people really like, oh, I miss sitting down and having service. And I go, okay, but how much, how fucking important is that? Like fucking get it fast casual. Like, I think it's just in some ways I think the business model of like old school yeah places are going to be more like, what do you want, number one? Okay, you're done. Yeah, none of the nice idea. Like one nook over there, like what's the fucking right with that, like that you want to go like full service, it's either if the price is low, that means like workers aren't getting paid, or like operators are working more hours unpaid and just trying to take a hit. But I really am very I really want to see actually Vietnamese restaurant go to even more to a fast casual, and I'd love for folks to find a way to kind of like imbue it with hospitality, but without service, because you can, no one complains about like Shake Shack's lack of service,
Yeah.
but they're fast casual, but they have a sense of hospitality or whatever, and so this is kind of, I'm like, that's kind of what I want to see. Like, Vietnamese restaurateurs are very resourceful, and it's like this is the way to go. Like, you just got to figure out a way to like still imbue it with hospitality without like a lot of, so the less workers you have, the less labor you have, the more you can pay your labor to, like, so it's just, and the thing is that, people are leaving restaurant workers are leaving the industry because the pay is so terrible. I'm like, actually, so you're even having a hard time finding staff willing
Oh
to
my
to
God, it's
work.
hard.
Yeah, and I don't buy that it's like a labor shortage. It's more like people don't want to fucking work in that fucking environment, and so like, how do you like, I think a fast casual could be an opportunity to like, how do you like create a working environment that actually people want to come back to, and it's not because people are lazy, it's because they're like, fuck this shit, and I'm like, for me, like if it's either operators or workers, I always kind of side with the workers because they always get shafted, because really when a restaurant goes under, it's the majority of the times it's the workers haven't paid to 2 weeks already, they're always holding the bag, and so I yeah, so I'm very interested in, again, um I'm very empathetic
Empathetic,
to
yeah.
how hard it is for operators, because I used to be one too, but at the same time, like, as hard as we have it, we just can't use that to then like, ignore the people who actually do the work every
Yeah.
day, and
How
without
long?
any benefit of profit sharing, unless it's
Yeah.
a worker owned project,
How long did you have Good Girl Dinette?
I had good internet for like 9.5 years.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was really trying to hold on to I get to 10, and I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this, and
Yeah.
that's and one of the reasons why, well, a main part of why I sold the site to Burger Lords, love them, was that, rent was getting high,
Yeah.
like they were increasing my rent, and I was like, I can't absorb that, and I was just doing the numbers, and it was getting really dire, and I realized if I go on and I agree to this newer rent, I would not be able to pay my payroll, and I will shut down. And I that was the thing. I was like, I cannot not make that, not honor the obligation every 2 weeks, and so that made the hard choice, like, instead of like trying to wait it out and not pay people, I should just quit when, like, I know I can for sure pay my payroll. And so, and and people used to say, oh, it's because she paid too much. I'm like, no, it had nothing to do with my, I did pay more than the average, but it was like, it was the rent that was a final deciding factor
Mm.
in my wanting to close, and not to mention, like my knees were like not so good. My fucking body was falling apart and stuff, but like I just, I bump into former employees all the time, and not all the time, but like enough times, and it's like I never have to like avere my eyes. I never, like, look at her face, how you doing, like, so I feel like that was more valuable to me than
Yeah.
keeping it going.
Anybody who can last more than 3 years as an operator has grit.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
it
yeah,
yeah. Anything over
it's
a year is brutal.
yeah, the first year is just like you really it tests your mettle, like what you made
Hmm.
of, girl, and because it's like, like it's the first year is like if you're gonna shit any bricks, you be shitting bricks then, what I mean? Like it's because it's like it's fucking real, like I mean the first weekend of your opening, you're like, oh, this fucking dream. Why the fuck did I dream this
Yeah,
dream?
that's
Like
so true.
yeah,
Any
yeah.
reason, any reason anybody has before they go into a restaurant is all bullshit. It's all, it's all like weird idealistic things that once you hit the practical rubber meets the road, things are completely different than what you thought they were.
Yeah, and I come from a family of restaurants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they're like like when they heard I was opening a restaurant, they're like, we finally understand what you do because they had no understanding what I did in social work, but they also said don't do it. You know what I mean? So, but even yeah, it's like it's also very different because if it's like a restaurant that's some sort of like a is like some reflection of your like a love of yours, every dish that didn't execute 100% feels very personal. Every
Mm,
person who wasn't 100% satisfied feels like a failure, so it's like it's very different like working in a restaurant and executing dishes versus like it's your name, it's your vision, and it's
yeah.
just and that's the it's not like the physical work, it's the psychological trauma that like gets you. And like did you know that most restaurant workers like I was going through like ADP, and they were talking up their payroll services, and they said we can alleviate you of all these these headaches of payroll, and and they're like, because when is what like the most common time employers send in their payroll information, and I'm like, I don't, and it's just 2 a.m. I'm like, that is fucking true, because every
So
2 a.m.
true.
I was like putting, so I was like, oh fuck, and I ended up going with ADP because I couldn't afford the extra. I just fucking did everything by hand. That's probably why I'm burned out too. But but it's like, yeah, so like you kind of sleeping, and you're like, oh fuck, it's like tomorrow's pay, tomorrow's, I need to send payroll in tonight so that 2 days later, I can have paychecks. It's just like crazy stuff like that. So
Shit is real.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you were close to deciding to shut down,
Mm-hmm.
what did you think that you were going to transition into?
I don't know. But I was wanting, like to write more. And I just, owning a restaurant and like having a writing practice is like um
They don't go hand in hand.
hard. They don't, I was able to write a few things here and there, but it wasn't like anything regular. And so I thought, what, I'll get back to writing. Um, I just kind of like really didn't care. Like I'll get an admin job, like I just wanted, like, really, I was just, once I decided that we were going to close, I just wanted to make sure that, we had like a month and a half to find new employment for the staff that were there. We just,
Wow.
I wanted to say goodbye to the neighborhood like that. We just wanted to execute, and that was, and I mean, because really, this had been such a dream. It was like, it was, gut wrenching and stuff, but so like thinking about what was next, like it kind of didn't register and didn't matter,
And so what
yeah.
did you end up, how did you transition out?
Well, so I think like it was maybe a month or so, or maybe even before it closed. Cuong Pham of Red Boat Fish Sauce emailed me and says, hey, I hear that you're closing. Do you want to go to Vietnam, go to Phuket with me,
Wow.
and because he'd been asking for a while, and I said, I'm so busy, and I can't pay, I don't have enough money to pay staff to do the work I need to do, to go. And he goes, well, you don't have that problem anymore, so so,
Then,
and
yeah.
that's yeah. And then yeah, and then we did that, so that was like, super fun. And then when
What
I
year was
was
that?
um 2018,
Oh, I didn't realize you
maybe
closed.
19 early. Yeah. We closed like in October 2018. So
Wow. Okay.
yeah, so I don't remember, it was like the first of the year 2019 or something, but no, I think it must have been earlier, because what happened was that, I went to Vietnam, and he had a documentarian uh, uh, film there, and so I was kind of like like a chef's perspective on stuff. And then that was when I got to know Go better, more the operation better, and I really like how he runs his business and how he treats his workers and stuff. So like when I was like, hey, I should, if you want, let's like, I'd love to be your R&D chef. And then I came back, and then Dave Chang called me up and said, I'd love for you to go to Beirut to interview a shawarma master with Chris Ying. And I'm like, okay.
That is so random. But did you know Dave Chang from the restaurant? Did he come in? How did you? Yeah, okay.
I know him because his team interviewed me for Ugly Delicious season 1, and then he asked me on to his podcast, and then we just had a good time, and then he said like, hey, you want to go to Beirut for me with Chris? And so I know nothing about Beirut, but I would love to go. And so it ended up like I was interviewing a refugee Syrian shawarma master who was now in Beirut. And so he introduced Syrian style shawarma to Lebanon. Like, and I got to understand like, the difference between Syrian shawarma versus Lebanese shawarma, and like I just need, like, I'm like, oh, I'm interviewing a refugee. Like I kind of channeled all the things I hate, all the questions I hate when people ask about refugees, is what they just want to talk about the refugee experience, but they never talk about you. Like the thing is, the interesting thing about Abu wasn't necessarily because he was a refugee, but he was a shawarma master from Damascus who had a following. So once he opened in Beirut, like people were already clamming, and like he had this like really wonderful. So I just wanted to ask him more about his expertise than just like, because I think people think that our refugee experience defines us, completely. It doesn't. And so, and Abu, when I first met him, he was kind of a little standoffish, and then when I asked, like, I think he was expecting me to answer those questions that are kind of very basic questions, and then he realized, oh, you're asking like real questions, like about me versus like idea you think of, and so he like got really into it, and like it's like he talked about how he learned how to like make shawarma by like sneaking, but really like sneaking looks when the master was looking, because they're all very secretive, and like he like looked through a peephole and like a knot in the wall, so it's kind of, it was very tempopo, so it was really got into it, and I was just like, it was really great, so and I got to like try, like I had never had like raw lamb's what is that liver before, and the texture was amazing, so like it was like so and then after that I told Dave I could only stay there for like 2 days, because I go back, kind of fly back, so I could do my Banh Chung Collective, so it was just like a whirlwind, and I was just like, well, this is not so bad, closing your restaurant. Just having like just more experiences I had for a long time, because I was just like really just wanting to make this restaurant work.
Yeah, God, we gotta go. I want to like check out this shawarma master. I have to tangentially like make a turn because my brain couldn't get out of the question. What the fuck is a shawarma master? Like, what does it take to become a shawarma master?
I mean, it's like
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I mean, it's like quite an art, and his spit. He said, we'll do a small spit today. It was 30 kilos. 30 kilos was the smallest. And it's like, you have to be a master at like meat cutting, understand like how to like, because I think like, like he gets his lamb real young. He has, it's like all these like considerations you have to make sure that the lamb is what it is, and the seasoning is like so simple, so you have to understand just the quality, and so he like, I was talking to him, and then he like let me cut some lamb with him, which I'm like, okay, like I just thought, so it was like real yeah, really eye-opening, and it made me really appreciate the hard work that goes into it's kind of like pho, like if people don't know about it, they don't really have a lot of respect for it because they don't
Yeah.
know, your kung fu to get there, right? And like you can tell his kung fu was like great, because it's just like the way he cut, the way he's able to like shape it, and like just and it's a layering of fat and lean too,
Ah.
so it's not just putting stuff on and then you're done, you know
Yeah, there's so much to that shawarma or what's the Mexican one?
al pastor.
Pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much magic to that it is. Now that you say you associate the word master to shawarma or al pastor, it is insane. There's a restaurant in LA called Abash. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you've heard of it. It comes from the owner comes from this other small hole in the wall called Roro's, and their shawarma is to me the best in the city. And it's just a hole in the wall. And now that you bring up this whole idea of a shawarma man, I'm gonna go talk to Maurice over at Al Bash,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah, his is the best. His shawarma is the best in the city, and it's chicken
What
shawarma,
style is it? What style is it?
Lebanese,
Okay. Yeah, because
Lebanese.
what Abu told me is that the Lebanese prefer leaner shawarma, whereas Syrian shawarma is a little fattier, and I prefer the little fattier because I love
Mm.
fago. So
Yes.
yeah, so for me, fago is the best. That's the best cut for pho. So yeah, it was amazing. Like the top, like in like a Mexican pastor is like the top is a pineapple. The top
Mm-hmm.
of a booze is like just like a layer of lamb's fat. It just like trickles
Wow.
down.
And it
So it's
just
just
drooped.
like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the chicken shawarma I think has yogurt in it, the Lebanese one. I don't know if that
Mm.
tenderizes the chicken, but God Almighty, the flavor on that place. Yeah, best
Well,
in
I
the.
got I gotta check it out.
Yeah, we should probably go sometime. It's
Yeah.
just amazing, absolutely amazing. So then once you started to you came back from Fukuoka, came back from Beirut, things started to settle down. Uh, then what started to move? I mean, COVID came in, right?
Yeah. I mean, we had yeah. I mean, but I think it was 2019 I became the R&D chef for Red Boat. So it was like a year of not COVID, not yet COVID.
Yeah.
And so, but that year, we like were working on a proposal for a cookbook with Tien Nguyen. Tien Nguyen's my partner, but she also like when I was talking to her about like, oh, let's think about some, I'm like bouncing ideas off of her, like, the fun projects we can do. I knew I wanted to do like a chef's rub series, like chefs that have like a great relationship with Red Boat, and it's like a charitable giving uh a collaboration. And so we did one with Brian Ing of KCET, and his all the 10% of the proceeds went to like an animal rescue that he really
Hmm.
loves. And then we did one with Stuart Rioza, who's like a big supporter of Red Boat, and he did a spice garum salt, and his went to zero food print, which is like a program to offset carbon credits for
Yeah.
restaurants. And just anyway to increase the amount of farms that transition to more sustainable practices. And then we did like a caramel, and then so we were all I had all these ideas, and I said like we should also do nuk jum, um, an instant nip gem. And then things like, oh, when's Red Boat's anniversary, or when did Red Boat start? And then it goes and said, oh, 2011. And so we're like, oh, things like was telling me that, oh, 10 years is up, almost up, it's like 2 years away, you should write a cookbook. And so I asked him to come on a call, and we just proposed it to Gun, and then started on the proposal to send out to a publishing company. And so yeah, so we pitched the idea, got it greenlit and or got it, HMH.
Approved. Hmm.
Yeah, HMH acquired it, the publishing house, and then we spent the pandemic writing it.
Writing it.
Yeah, the first of
Perfect,
the
right?
pandemic. Yeah, yeah. It was
Perfect
crazy though.
timing.
Yeah. I mean, we was just like, we don't want to go to supermarket shopping. We don't want to fucking die. So like every time we went to supermarket shopping, we knew we just couldn't make a mistake because we didn't want to go out again, like, okay, let's just do, and then we kind of bought like twice as much as we needed because I knew I was going to mess up one time, just stuff like that. Yeah.
Random shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So random. You've mentioned to me before that you love LA so much.
I do.
But why? Why do you love LA?
Why
What
do I
makes
love
it?
it? Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like it's not completely logical, but at the same time totally logical, like love is, well, one is I love LA because for the precise reason people don't love it because they say there's no city core. I love that there's just like pockets of a neighborhood that make up a
Mm,
whole, so there's no centralized place, and because of that you just have these very distinctive neighborhoods, and it's like home to like the largest Thai community, home to the largest community outside of Korea, Vietnam, and all that stuff. And what and then so they're the largest populations outside of Korea, but at the same time they're all centered around LA. So what we have is critical mass in Los Angeles
mm.
that you don't have anywhere else.
What
And
else?
and I'm gonna like make an enemy by saying like whatever the East Coasters are thinking like their Asian community is strong, they have nothing. It is nothing compared to West Coast, particularly SoCal, like our critical mass is so amazing, and so we get to have these conversations that don't get interrupted because other places they're not the majority, and so the conversation is richer, and it's not so much of I was the only kid, I was the only Asian kid. It's like no, it's like you had a whole community, and that's why Little Saigon in Orange County is so amazing, is because we didn't that community wasn't created to talk to white people.
Yeah.
That community was
You're
created for
right.
Nuy Viet, and because of that, the conversations, the culture
Untouched. Yeah.
is has depth to it, so much depth to it that Người Việt from Vietnam tới đây and
Hmm.
these who like in Little Saigon to see what's up, and
Yeah.
so that's like for me that's why I think Los Angeles is because of the critical mass and because of the political work that is being done here, like the El Monte case really, there's a lot of leadership that was formed to combat such a work, and it originated in Los Angeles. It was also AWA, which is San Francisco based, but so much comes from here. So much talent comes from what I'm not sure what it was called now, but we used to call it Asian Pacific Legal Center, like all the lawyers doing, like Kim Lu
Hmm.
Ing,
Hmm.
she an asylum lawyer, like so much talent comes because you had this moment, the ethnic studies or Asian, we UCLA had the first Asian American Studies
Right.
department, like can't touch it, you know what I mean, whatever East Coast. It's like, and I'm not, for me, like I always know, like where like when like East Coast Asian Americans are, you're from the East Coast, I can tell just the way you're just like, like just it's not your fault you were born, you didn't grow up here, it's not your fault. But don't be talking about how Asian America is like so fucking great in New York, okay?
But there is a big difference between the
Yeah.
East Coast and West Coast, anything, East and West Coast Asians are, it's different. And I think that the East Coast Asians that come out to the West Coast to live, um, gives it gives a richness to the West Coast because these East Coast Asians bring a certain their culture, and it reinforces this strengthen a different part of our West Coast culture. It gives a I got to give it to them. They grind. They'll go harder. You got to give it to them, right? The East
Go
Coast.
harder. They go harder. I don't.
You don't
I
think
don't
so?
think so. I don't think so. LA, baby. You know. Yeah, not just like SoCal, not just LA,
Yeah.
SoCal is like untouched, you know. So yeah, so when I say LA, you know, like I mean like this whole environs of like
Yeah.
some parts of Orange County too.
I
So
think I want to hear who you think are some of the leaders in the Vietnamese American space today, if you're comfortable talking about
hmm.
that.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, no doubt it's does work. But you know, and you know, Ocean Vuong's book just came out, you know. So
Okay. Besides those two, are there any other prominent voices in the Vietnamese American space that is mainstream and white people are listening? Are they making effective changes with their moves?
well, you know, I mean that's kind of interesting that, you know, like one this like um this favoring of like prominent, you know, because I do think like, I mean, why I love LA is because it's not just one person, it's like a whole community. So I think like, you know, like so for me, like if that's always like that's the organizer in me, you know, not one person, but like a whole community. Like I think visual communications, you know, like a great is a great uh you know organization that helped, you know, like yeah, Justin Lin. I mean, you know, come on, who doesn't love Fast and the Furious? I mean, who didn't remember kind of like the cultural shift that came after Tokyo Drift? You know,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean. So I think like not just you know Justin Lin, John Cho, you know, but there's also like you know John Cho's first feature I think was with Quentin from Quentin Lee. I think it's Quentin.
Lee.
Yeah, Quentin Lee. I was like Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Lee in Shopping for Fangs, you know, or that was the first time I heard of him, and that was kind of I think his breakout role, you know. So yeah. So there's you know Margaret Cho. I mean, they all like connected in this way, you know. But I'm not sure like you know, do I really care about prominence? I do really kind of care
Okay, yeah,
what
that's
people
a
are
great.
listening to, you know what I
But
mean?
see, that's a
But what's
great answer.
inspiring to me is different. Yeah.
That's a great answer, but at the same time, and we were debating about this very thing last night. Who gives a fuck about prominence? Well, all right, well, let's debate that because somebody needs to speak out and say shit and move things. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have the quote unquote the prominence or the pedestal to like shoot out these messages or tweet out these ideas, then do we have a voice? I mean, that's debatable, right? And that's what we were talking about last night. A lot of us were just like, it got heated. It's like this very idea of prominence and why mainstream matters. We're debating it. Does it matter? It kind of does. I mean, everybody was arguing in different directions, but it kind of does if you think about it. Because without a Viet Thanh Nguyen, the United States sometimes wouldn't listen or wouldn't have an opportunity to debate this thought from our position. And so
Yeah, but
somebody
at the
like Viet Thanh
same
Nguyen,
yeah, but at the same time, I think you're falling into like if you're like, oh, without Viet, no one would talk. It's more like because Viet's there, you know, the you know journalists don't want to go anywhere else. Because for me, I feel like you know what the work we should be doing is actually like getting more voices out there. You know,
yes, I
so that's
agree.
so like choosing one spokesperson is very unfair. It's
Totally. And
extremely
but
unfair. You
But
know.
this is why I wanted to talk about this very thing. We need to have more of that. You're right. We need to have. But okay, so now it's actually getting to where I want to. It we need more of Vietnam wins because why have one person on the thing? But how do we get more voices out there?
Well, I would say that we need more voices, but I'm not saying we need more Vit 10 win because we don't need like replicas. You know what I mean? But what you're talking about is you're just talking about, you know, just need media in general to be able to find diverse voices within the community so that the community doesn't just look like one person, you know? Um, yeah, I mean, I find that like, I mean, we're just talking about Vietnamese people, right? We're not talking
Yeah, just Vietnamese
about
people.
I see. That's a little that yeah, but that is I think like we're set up for that. We're set up the only one person gets to be that, and that goes to like, you know,
Who's we set that up? What do you mean by we set that up?
well, okay, so media has set it up so that the Vietnamese American community only has one voice, and it's the same person they go to, and that's it's a big criticism about media in general is that it's lazy. Like they don't want to have to do any extra work, so they go to the same people. So there's no richness in that.
Yeah.
It's not a fucking tapestry; it's a fucking photocopy. You know what
A
I mean?
monolith. Yeah, it's a monolith.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
now, and this is also what we debated. Did American media get lazy and only selected this one guy? Or is this one guy he designed it himself and he is the only one because nobody else is designing it for themselves?
No, that it is a common it through like there have been studies that are like say like like media they just they're very journalists are very lazy and they go to the same source. They couldn't pick and like for them it's like once you get quoted, it's more likely you get quoted again. That's the problem when you don't have diversity. You don't have journalists who are uh, um, invested in having in cultivating a large pool of sources. So you go back to the same source. Like, why is David Chang always like they ask him about every something, like I like Chang, but like he isn't like he doesn't know everything, but they ask him for it, and that's a problem. And food journalism is very lazy about that stuff, because it doesn't want to go beyond that, and that's why they like to create stars so that they can go back to the same stars.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's why it's like not like I begrudge anybody about that, but like that's the problem is like you get quoted, and that's why like white experts get asked about everything is like they don't want to like MSG, let's go back to Harold McGee again. Like who there's so many fucking other people. So
Yeah.
and they become the authority. It's kind of this weird thing where like authority is given, and then once it's given once, and it has traction. Then like fucking Andrew Zimmern. Like fuck that guy. Everybody
Hmm.
fucking loves it. I'm like, have you have they call him the professor now? I'm like, have you fucking forgotten that he had this whole show called Bizarre Foods, in which he called other people's food bizarre, and
Hmm.
that he like patted himself in the back by the mere fact that he's able to swallow it. Fuck that shit. But
Yeah.
then he's like been able to like have this like authority, and it's like, what? I've been able to eat balut since forever too. So, like it's so so I find that it is part of media. Like they go to the same sources again and again and again, you know. And then
I,
but
I,
it's very good about also about, like bumping other folks and everything too. So it's
yeah.
like I don't think it's like what Viet engineered, but that is like how media plays out, and how and then our part is like how do you always encourage, or if not like shame media, is like fucking go find more people, not find other people, find more people. Don't be so fucking lazy about the shit.
Yeah, there's this, you know, um, dearth of voices. And I hope in the next, 10 years that we could have 20 or 30 more Viet Thanh wins and Amanda wins and Bao wins and more trans and, more Vietnamese names out there. You look
Yeah, I mean,
unhappy that I said
yeah.
that.
No, I mean, because again, that's what media does. Is like, oh, we need the next we need the next Amanda. I'm like, no, because these people that create their own lanes because they did something really extraordinary. And so like what we need is we just need to find new voices, in general, and not like kind of compare them to, because is Ocean Vuong the next Viet? No, Ocean Vuong is his own
Ocean
person with
Vuong.
his,
Yeah.
with his own voice. You know, he had this like fucking Instagram post in which he said he inadvertently channeled Short Round because he had like these glasses, and I was like, I fucking died. I was like dead. I was like, okay,
He's
okay,
a funny
honey.
dude.
He's it's just like it just yeah, it slayed me for sure. But yeah,
Ocean is a super funny guy. If you go back on one of his IG posts, he's like semi-naked, and he's like all and I can't remember what the caption is, but it's a really funny. Out of because he teaches and he's his writer, but
yeah.
at the
Mhm.
same time he's got this identity that is, I don't give a fuck what you think, and he's just out there and he doesn't care.
Yeah, it's reflective in his writing, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And I had a conversation I had a podcast with him, and he knows so much about MMA, about mixed
Oh,
martial
really?
arts,
Mm.
right? And I didn't know that. And then Bao Nguyen brought it up. He's like, you should listen to this one episode, and he talks in depth about MMA and the science of. So we actually talked a little bit about on the podcast about his knowledge of MMA and why he's talks about violence in one way, and then he's really into MMA, and it's kind of all conflicting, but it's not. It all makes sense when he explains it.
Yeah, I can see that it wouldn't be conflicting. It's uh yeah. So I really, yeah, I appreciate his mind for sure, you know, and like the connections he makes, you know.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
Banh Chung Collective, right? Is that what
Yeah.
you talked about earlier? What is that?
Well, it's just, you know, I started this we just celebrated our 10 years actually, or not the 10, yeah, our 10, not our 10 years, our 10th annual. But, you know, when I was, you know, when I came out, um, you know, going to theater was like just kind of uncomfortable because there's just homophobic people. You know, he's like, you know, it's like an uncle who's homophobic, or a cousin say some snide shit. And the thing is that, you know, it's like then you don't want to be throwing hands, you know, and then, you know, and then and it's always
Yeah.
like and it's always like they always nice on you, and then you always have to you know, they fucking laugh at it, you know, and I'm like, the fuck, you know, it was just like every time, like, and it wasn't just that, but it was like Thanksgiving and, you know, Christmas, can I get, you know, like just like I fucking hated going there because it's like you already fucking know who I am. Why the fuck, you know, what you gotta fucking, you
Well, you
know,
gotta
just
hate.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, and like when I just got out of college, and I'm like, oh, you know, you don't have a job yet, maybe because your hair too short. Because at the time I had like cropped hair, you know, like I had a buzz cut actually, you know, and I was like, you should shut the fuck up, is what you should do, you know. And so anyway, so I was just like, I just felt like, you know, there was a moment I was like disowned, and, you know, and so like just it was just like really tenuous, and, you know, it was like being disowned actually was the best thing ever because, you know, my grandma was like, ah, you know, I don't know you no more. I'm like, okay, fuck that shit, and fucking wild out, you know, and I gave interviews left and right about, you know, like, because I at the time we were starting a Vietnamese lesbian, bisexual, trans a support group, and Orange County Registered interviewed me, and it says Diep Tran from Orange County or Huntington Beach or some shit, you know, and they're like, oh my god, she called me up, and I said, I thought you disowned me, you know what's I thought you don't know me no more, and then
Oh
like,
shit! So your
so
grandma called you up after that happened?
well, because she didn't even read English, so it was like one of my cousins or my uncles was like, "Con Diệp nó làm gì vậy?" You know, and I was like, you know, I'm like, look, you don't know me no more, so you know, so then we kind of like, so she's like, you go hứa bà đừng có làm vậy nữa, you know, like,
What?
and I was like, what the, and like, I'm queer, grandma, you know, but she was like, she made me realize that I would not go on the record in the Orange County Register until she died.
Wait, did you make that agreement with her or no?
I did, because I'm like, I didn't really care about the Orange County Register because yeah, she didn't say nothing about the LA Times. So I'm like, I won't ever go on Orange County Register. It was like a
But
one off
but
anyway.
but but why did you agree to it? Knowing that she disowned you, and why would you agree to? Why would you appease her? That's my question.
You know, I mean, I guess one, you don't know grandma, you know, she's like, she fucking wear you down. But then also, it was like, it was no stakes for me because like I didn't, you know, the Orange County Register was the only reason I was on, was that, and I thought it was also disingenuous, you know, because I think I lived in Huntington Beach for a little bit, you know, but then I think officially my license, driver's license had it, but I was living in LA. But or the Orange County Register needed someone who lived in Orange County so they can quote. And so
Mm.
nobody in Orange County at the time wanted to be on the
On.
record.
Mm.
So I'm like, okay, fucking use my name, And they're like, I'm like, I don't live in Orange County anymore. He goes, but your license plate still says it, or driver's license still says it. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I think it's a little okay, but like
Fuck it. Just roll with it.
they need to corroborate, not like make it like no one really existed. So anyway, so for me, like I if she had to like I won't go on regular any outlets, I go hell no, But I didn't intend to have another article written about Vietnamese. I mean, the article was done. I don't think you need two
Yeah.
articles on like especially
Yeah.
what I did,
And,
So yeah, and I was
and
like, sure, grandma.
did you guys ever make up and be good?
Well, you know what, she's like, she was, she would always say something about like when you're going back to church and all this other stuff, and and then I just said like at some point, and when you get married, and like, dude, like if you had seen me, Ken, I had your hair, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
dude, anybody who's married me is a gay man, okay? Because it's just it's just like they there's no way I'm passing as a straight woman, okay? Um, and she hated my short hair, and I was like,
It,
I said, Grandma, will you ever accept me? Um, and then Grandma's like, accept you? I pray for you every day. And that was her form of acceptance, It's like, so I'm just like, okay, it's kind of twisted, but I see where you're going, And I'm like, it's not gonna happen, Grandma, but okay, just keep on asking. It's still gonna be a no. And then she got dementia, And so
ah.
it was just, like for me, with Grandma, you can never win an argument. You just kind of just like, for me, I just like, even when I was younger, like I never won an argument with her. I just sidestepped her.
Yeah.
Just like, it's like, look, it's not, she's not gonna change, And then I get to see myself spending my whole entire life trying to get her to change. But yeah, and she had dementia, and then and I really had to make peace with that, and like, you know, you know, I went back every week just like kind of help her, like bathe her and all this other stuff, because my grandpa was, he was overwhelmed, and we had an attendant, but that tenant was working like 24/7. I'm like, this is unethical. So I just like came once a week to like, hey, this is supposed to be your day off, and you know like official, so you don't have to do anything. So yeah, so I mean, we, grandma was a difficult person. She was a complicated person, and yeah, but like it or not, I was our histories are tied.
Yeah, and
you know
probably forged you to become who you are today.
in some ways, yeah, like as much as she didn't want me to be the heir of her legacy, I think I am.
Yeah, yeah, you're really you're a tough woman. You're a strong woman.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, she didn't want me to be her heir, but oh well, grandma. I sometimes think that when like, like, yeah, I think that, I in my head it's like, now, like when you pass away, I don't believe in heaven or hell. I don't believe in the afterlife really, but if there's anything, it's like you just become consciousness and you kind of know
Yeah.
everything, and all the bullshit, like your earthly considerations, like kind of go away. And I think grandma sometimes looks at, I go, okay girl, okay, that's good. Cái phở đó cũng được rồi, grandma never can, she nói là nhiều nhất là she like cũng được thôi, or like không có dở, nó không có dở đâu. Like, oh, that's fucking high praise,
Kamkaza is high praise.
You know what I mean? Không có bad, like, yeah, I mean, like the first time I made a dinner party for friends of mine, like grandma would just go around go like, hey, now you just like, and she was just like call everything crap, like good chó này, like, oh, cái này mày đưa này, no, like thầy đừng có làm cái việc khách tới mà cái này good chó. It was like, oh, grandma, just like go to your bedroom, go to your den, whatever, like, I'm 16, like, fuck it, let me save this dog shit.
Okay. Zip, thank you so much today. It's so heartwarming to hear all the stories, and heartbreaking in its own way too. War produces all these kinds of different outcomes, and whatever's going on in Ukraine and Afghanistan, this is the human condition happening over and over and over again. And thank you so much for being who you are and being such a huge contribution to our Vietnamese community here in Southern California.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure, and thanks for letting me not stay on point.
That's my job, is to make you.
I love.
Thank you so much, and I will be talking to you very soon.
All right. Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Vietnamese with Kenneth Nguyen. The Vietnamese is produced by Brittany Tran. Special thanks to Jane Nguyen, Catherine Nguyen, Tina Pham, Sydney Jamie, and Christo Trin. Please find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at The Vietnamese Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like, and comment. Please rate and give us a review wherever you find our podcasts. Thanks again for listening.